They said the plane was lost forever, swallowed by 40 years of ice and silence. But here, in a land where even the wind holds its breath, nothing truly disappears. We came searching for wreckage, and instead, we found her. A creature the locals call a ghost eyes like fire, walking where no life should survive. Yet somehow, she remembers. What secret lies buried beneath this frozen heart of the world? Tonight, we dig into the past, and the past looks back. The storm had moved across the Greenland ice shelf like a living thing, dragging walls of white through a sky the color of steel. By dawn, the wind had gone quiet, leaving behind a silence so complete it pressed against the skin. Beneath that silence, something shifted. A ridge of snow collapsed, revealing the dull glint of metal frozen deep inside the glacier. A wing, a whisper of aluminum lost for decades. The Arctic had spoken again, and somewhere far away, someone was listening. At the Northern Climate Research Station, Dr. Aaron Cole stared at the flickering radar feed on his monitor. A new anomaly had appeared overnight, a faint reflection, metallic, buried almost 100 meters down. At 61, Aaron had spent half his life mapping permafrost layers. But this shape was different. Clean edges, uniform density, a man-made ghost entombed in ice. He leaned closer, rubbing the bridge of his nose. 40 years, he murmured. Could it really be that one? The lab door creaked open, and a gust of cold air followed Dr. Maya Reyes inside. Snow clung to her parka hood, melting into tiny beads that rolled down the olive fabric. "Your sensors picked it up too?" she asked. Her voice carried that mix of curiosity and fatigue familiar to scientists who'd spent too long in the Arctic night. Aaron nodded, turning the screen toward her. Coordinates matched the last transmission of Flight N1205, December 1978. Maya's brows lifted. "That's impossible. The crash site was never found. You're saying it's under this shelf?" Aaron didn't answer right away. He clicked to enlarge the satellite, overlay the bright dot of metal pulsing faintly amid endless white. "It shouldn't be there," he said finally. The glacier would have swallowed it long before now. But the ice shifted this winter. It's as if it's pushing something back to the surface. Maya studied the image in silence, her breath fogging the air. Outside, wind scraped softly against the glass, the faint sound like whispering voices under snow. Down the hall, Ethan Cole was packing his gear. He'd heard the word plane and 1978 and knew his father would be heading into the field. 28 years old, restless and searching for a story that mattered. Ethan had followed Aaron north with a camera and a stubborn need to understand the man who'd spent his life chasing ghosts of the past. He checked the battery on his drone, then glanced through the frosted window toward the horizon. The sky was clearing a thin slit of pale gold breaking through clouds. Somewhere out there, a mystery waited. That night, as the team gathered around the briefing table, the room hummed with quiet tension. Maps spread across the surface, lit by the yellow glow of portable lamps. Beside Aaron and Maya sat Riley Ford, the broad-shouldered engineer whose job was to keep everyone alive, and Dr. Noor Al-Salim, a molecular biologist with eyes sharp as glass. "We move at first light," Aaron said. "The anomaly's stable. We'll take the crawler as far as the ridge, then proceed on foot. Temperatures dropping to -40. Stay linked by radio." Riley grunted, chewing on a piece of gum. "I've seen glaciers eat machines whole," he said. "Let's hope this one's polite." "No, men." Outside, snow began to fall again, slow and deliberate. Maya stood by the window, watching the flakes drift sideways in the windless dark. "Do you believe in echoes?" she asked softly. Aaron looked up. "Echoes? Of things that once lived, people, animals. Sometimes I think this place remembers." Aaron gave a small, weary smile. "Then let's hope it remembers where that plane went down." Morning arrived as a bruised shade of blue. The convoy crawled out across the flat expanse, treads grinding over packed snow. The horizon was a blank line dividing white from gray, endless and oppressive. Hours passed before Riley raised his gloved hand. "Hold up," he called. "Look at that ridge." Ahead of them, the snow curved upward in a perfect arc, like the frozen crest of a wave. At its base lay a patch of darker ice, smooth and glistening, and across it, faint impressions of paw prints. Maya jumped down from the vehicle, kneeling beside them. "Bobcat," she whispered, brushing the edge with her glove. "But that's impossible. They don't live this far north." Aaron joined her, scanning the endless snowfield. The tracks led toward the coordinates of the anomaly. "Maybe we're not the first to find this place," he said quietly. "Maybe something else has been guarding it." A sudden gust tore across the plain, scattering loose snow like ash. For a heartbeat, Maya thought she saw movement at the ridge, the brief outline of an animal watching them, then gone. She felt her pulse quicken beneath the layers of wool and down. By afternoon they reached the site. The crawler's sensors began to beep, the signal growing stronger. Beneath their boots, the ice glowed faintly blue, the color of compressed centuries. Riley unpacked the ground-penetrating scanner, its low hum filling the frigid air. The image built slowly on the tablet screen. Fuselage, curvature, wingspan, tail assembly. It was no natural formation. Ethan lowered his camera, eyes wide. "It's really there," he breathed. After 40 years, Helpazard, they set up camp before the light faded. The sun dipped behind the ridge, painting the snow in soft orange, then sinking into gray. As night claimed the horizon, the temperature plunged. Aaron sat by the heater, writing in his notebook, while Maya reviewed thermal readings. Ethan wandered a few yards from camp, camera in hand. The quiet was immense, a silence that seemed alive, waiting. Then, from somewhere beyond the ridge, came a low sound, almost a growl, carried on the wind. He lifted the camera, zooming into the dark. 2 eyes reflected back gold and steady before fading into nothing. When he returned to camp, his face was pale. "There's something out there," he said. Riley chuckled. "Plenty of somethings out there, kid." But Maya's gaze was distant. "Gold eyes?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Yes," she exhaled slowly. "Then we're not alone tonight." The wind picked up, rattling the tents, tugging at the equipment lines. Aaron zipped his parka and stepped outside, looking toward the ridge where the boy had seen the eyes. The stars burned cold above him, scattered across an infinite sky. The land seemed to breathe, each gust a slow exhale from the glacier's heart. Beneath that breath, he imagined the echo of engines, voices, laughter all trapped under layers of ice. 40 years, he whispered again. "And now you want to be found." No distracted. Far below, under the crust of centuries, the wing of Flight N, 1205, shimmered faintly as the glacier shifted. In the darkness around it, something moved small, graceful, silent. Snow dust fell from the ceiling of ice, and the sound it made was almost like a sigh. The Arctic was waking, and its memory was long. The wind had died during the night, leaving behind a sky stretched thin and colorless. Dawn arrived not with light but with a faint blue glow that seeped through layers of frozen air. At the edge of the glacier, Dr. Maya Reyes crouched beside the fresh tracks they had found the previous day. The prints were larger than any bobcat she had ever studied, deep, deliberate, spaced with perfect rhythm, as if the creature moved with purpose rather than hunger. The Arctic was supposed to be empty. But emptiness, she thought, could still have eyes. Behind her, Ethan Cole adjusted his camera, the lens fogging with every breath. "You think it's real?" he asked softly. Maya didn't look up. "Real enough to survive here," she replied. "That already makes it extraordinary." She brushed a gloved hand along one of the impressions, noting the compact heel pad, the distinct claw sheaths. A bobcat shouldn't exist this far north, not unless it learned how to belong to the ice. Dr. Aaron Cole joined them, his boots crunching against the brittle snow. He studied the tracks in silence, then glanced toward the horizon where ridges folded into a pale infinity. Maybe it followed something else, he said. Or someone. Maya met his gaze. Maybe it's leading us. By mid-morning, the team reached an old Inuit outpost buried in snow, its wooden beams blackened with age. From the doorway emerged Koa, the elder hunter who had been guiding them by radio. His skin was the color of sun-worn cedar, eyes bright against a maze of wrinkles. "You've seen her, haven't you?" he asked without greeting. "The Snow Guardian." Maya froze. "A bobcat?" she asked. Koa nodded slowly. "She walks the same paths every winter. Some say she guards the lost ones." Inside the small cabin, the air smelled of seal, oil, and smoke. Koa showed them carvings on a piece of driftwood, a feline shape surrounded by circles, ice rings. Maya realized. "Our stories say she was born from the breath of the first blizzard," Koa said. "When a man dies alone in the cold, she keeps watch until his spirit finds its way." Aaron listened, respectful but skeptical. "Myths," he said under his breath. "Sometimes myths remember better than men," Koa replied. That night the storm returned, not violent, but slow, heavy, like the earth breathing through frost. In the glow of their tents, shadows moved across the snow. Ethan kept filming, though his fingers burned from cold. The camera caught faint movement near the ridge, a sleek body gliding between ridges of ice, almost silent. The eyes appeared again, golden and unwavering, reflecting his lamp like twin coins in the dark. Maya watched through binoculars. The creature's coat shimmered silver gray, dusted with frost. She could see the breadth of its paws, each step measured, precise. A scar crossed its muzzle, the same one she had seen in legends carved by the Inuit. "Nira," she whispered, naming it without knowing why. The bobcat paused, turning its head as if hearing her voice, then vanished behind the ridge. By morning, the storm had buried its tracks, but something else remained, a carcass of a snow hare, perfectly intact except for the faint bite mark on its neck. It lay beside Maya's tent, untouched by frost. She lifted it carefully, studying the clean kill. "A gift," Ethan murmured. Maya nodded. "Or a warning." They were suspension. The team pressed forward, following the coordinates toward the metallic signal buried beneath the ice. But as the temperature dropped, the instruments began to malfunction. Riley cursed at the failing engines, and Noor tried recalibrating the scanners. Maya glanced behind them just for a heartbeat and saw movement again along the ridge. Nira, following, silent as a drifting shadow. They reached a crevasse where wind howled through cracks like voices. The path ahead was too narrow for vehicles, so they proceeded on foot, roped together. Maya led, her eyes scanning the snow for danger. Halfway across, the ground trembled. A crust of ice gave way, and Riley's leg plunged through up to the knee. "Hold him!" Aaron shouted. Maya knelt instantly, spreading her weight, and looked down. Beneath the ice shimmered a hollow chamber, smooth and blue, leading deeper underground, and on its floor, unmistakable paw prints. Nira had crossed here before them. Once Riley was safe, Maya looked again through the opening. She could feel the cold radiating upward like breath. "She's mapping the ice," Maya murmured, "teaching us where not to fall." Aaron studied her, uncertain whether she was joking, but her tone held no irony, only awe. That evening, as the camp settled, Ethan showed Maya his footage. On the screen, Nira's figure moved through the snow with impossible grace. Her coat caught fragments of light like mirrors. Around her, tiny particles of snow swirled as if drawn toward her steps. "She's not afraid of us," Ethan said. Maya shook her head. "No, she's watching what we'll do next." Koa's voice came over the radio, crackling through static. "Be careful, Doctor," he warned. "When she walks with men, it means the past is waking." The transmission died with a hiss. Maya stared out across the glacier. The wind carried a faint cry, not human, not animal, something ancient and low. like the sound of shifting earth. After midnight, unable to sleep, Maya stepped outside. The sky was clear, a wash of stars over the white world. She heard a soft crunch in the snow and turned. Nira stood less than 20 yards away, her body haloed by moonlight. The bobcat's breath plumed gently in the air, her yellow eyes steady, unblinking. Maya felt no fear, only the strange pull of recognition, as if she were seeing a memory that didn't belong to her. The animal moved closer, step by step, until Maya could see the tiny frost crystals on her whiskers. Nira stopped, tilting her head slightly, studying the human before her. For a moment, the Arctic itself seemed to pause, listening. Then, with a slow grace, Nira turned and padded toward the ridge, stopping once to glance back. Without knowing why, Maya followed for several paces before the cold reminded her of her own fragile body. When she returned to her tent, Ethan was awake, camera ready. "Did you see her again?" he whispered. Maya smiled faintly. "She saw me." Outside, the wind began to rise, but the sound it carried was different this time, rhythmic, deliberate, almost like a heartbeat beneath the snow. Somewhere far beneath their feet, the glacier groaned, echoing through the night. By dawn, the prints were gone, erased by drifting powder, but something lingered in the air, a tension, a hum, as if the ice itself were aware of their presence now. Aaron looked out over the horizon and spoke quietly, not to the others but to whatever might be listening. "All right," he said. "If you want to be found, show us where to look." From beyond the ridge came a single, muffled sound, a low growl that melted into wind, and with it, the faint reflection of movement far below the ice, where light could not reach. The Arctic had answered, and its answer carried the voice of the bobcat. The storm had left behind a new landscape, a maze of glittering ridges and hollowed snow caverns sculpted by wind and silence. The glacier no longer looked familiar to the team. It had changed overnight, as if it had awakened and rearranged itself while they slept. Dr. Maya Reyes stood at the mouth of the valley, scanning the whiteness ahead. Her breath came out in slow clouds, freezing against the fur of her olive parka. Beside her, Nira's tracks were sharp again, fresh since dawn. Every print pointed toward the same direction, the coordinates of the buried plane. Ethan adjusted his camera, zooming in on the trail. "She's ahead of us," he murmured. Maya nodded without looking. "She wants us to follow." It wasn't scientific, not the kind of conclusion her years of fieldwork would normally allow. Yet there was no other way to explain the feeling growing inside her. Nira was guiding them not away from danger, but towards something waiting to be remembered. The wind began to rise as the convoy crawled into the hollow basin. Riley drove the lead crawler, chewing gum like a metronome for his nerves. "Visibility's dropping," he said into the radio. "If that cat knows a shortcut, I'd take it." Maya smiled faintly. The snow ahead shimmered faintly with strange geometry arcs and grooves carved into the ice over decades. To her trained eye, it wasn't random. "Those are her paths," she whispered. "She's been walking them for generations." Nira appeared on a ridge above them, watching. The Arctic light caught her silver-gray coat, turning it to molten pewter. Frost clung to the fur along her shoulders like powdered glass. Her broad paws gripped the icy slope with quiet confidence. She stood motionless, tail swaying once, twice, then turned her head toward the team, eyes glowing amber under the pale sky. The look wasn't one of fear or curiosity. It was command. Maya lifted her binoculars. "She's warning us about the ice ahead," she said. "There's a cavity under that ridge." Aaron frowned but trusted her instinct. He adjusted the crawler's route, steering left. Moments later, the ground where they would have driven collapsed, leaving a smoking hole into the glacier's heart. The ice moaned like a wounded animal. Riley whistled low. "Remind me to thank your cat." The collapse revealed something strange beneath the shattered surface. The ice glowed faint blue, not from light but from something metallic reflecting deep below. Ethan's drone descended into the hole, its small light flickering like a firefly in the dark. Through the feed, they saw the fractured outline of a wing, half swallowed by crystal walls. Maya's breath caught. "It's the plane," she said. She led us right to it, and Major was lived to ground. As they prepared the descent, Nira remained on the ridge, her silhouette black against the storming sky. The first flakes began to fall again, swirling around her in slow spirals. Ethan filmed until she vanished behind the veil of snow. When he lowered the camera, he realized she wasn't gone. She had moved closer, almost invisible against the whiteness. Watching, guarding, they anchored ropes and descended into the hole, one by one. Inside, the temperature plummeted. Light fractured through the ice ceiling like shards of glass. It was silent except for the echo of their own breaths. Frost formed halos around their lamps. Beneath their boots, the frozen fuselage gleamed a metallic spine buried under 40 years of winter. Aaron's hand trembled as he brushed the ice. "This is it," he whispered. "Flight N-1205. Then a sound rippled through the chamber, a soft scrape, rhythmic, deliberate. Maya turned her headlamp toward the source. Nira was there, standing on a ledge of ice 10 feet above them. The beam caught her amber eyes, and they shimmered like small suns in the blue darkness. She moved along the ledge, her paws silent, each step marking a line that circled the fuselage. "She's tracing something," Maya said softly, "mapping the safe ground." The glacier groaned again, and a crack raced across the floor. Aaron shouted for everyone to back away. The spot where he'd stood only seconds earlier split open, revealing a hidden pit of water below. Nira stopped, tail flicking once, then turned to face Maya directly. Their eyes met human and wild, both breathing frost into the same frigid air. For a heartbeat, the boundary between species disappeared. Maya didn't see an animal. She saw an intelligence forged by survival, an inheritance of memory carried in fur and blood. "She remembers this place," Maya whispered. Her ancestors watched it fall. They climbed out as the storm thickened, the wind screaming through the canyon walls. On the surface again, visibility was almost gone. Ethan caught a glimpse of movement through his lens. Nira darting across the ridge with speed that defied gravity, stopping now and then to look back, as if counting the humans still standing. She vanished behind a wall of snow, then reappeared farther ahead, guiding their route through the white chaos. Hours later, as darkness fell, the team made camp on higher ground. The storm had softened to a fine whisper. Maya stood outside her tent, unable to shake the sense that they were not just explorers anymore. They were witnesses to something far older than science. In the distance, she saw Nira again, sitting upright on the crest of a snow dune. The aurora shimmered faint green above them, painting her coat with ghostly light. Around her paws, the snow drifted but never covered the ground, as if even the wind dared not hide her tracks. Aaron joined Maya in silence. "You think she's protecting that plane?" he asked. Maya shook her head. "Not the plane," she said quietly. "What it remembers." Beneath their feet, deep within the ice, the trapped fuselage creaked a sound like breathing. In her tent that night, Maya replayed the day's footage frame by frame. In one shot, Nira stood beside the gaping hole, head bowed toward the buried wing. For a brief instant, the ice reflected both of them, woman and Bobcat, as though sharing the same outline. "She's showing us what we forgot," Maya murmured to the lens. "She's teaching us how to listen." Outside, the Arctic sighed. Nira's cry rose across the wind, not a roar, not a threat, but a call. Long, low, ancient. It rolled over the snowfields like thunder and faded into the night, leaving behind an ache that neither science nor faith could name. When morning came, the storm had cleared. The glacier stretched calm and silent again, but where the ice had broken, fresh paw prints circled the hole in perfect symmetry, marking the shape of an infinity symbol. The Arctic remembered, and the Bobcat kept its vigil. The Arctic sun returned weakly, hanging low and pale over the glacier, as if reluctant to warm what it did not understand. Beneath that fragile light, the excavation began. Steam rose from the thermal drills. their rhythmic pulse echoing through the valley like a slow heartbeat. Each hiss melted a little more of the past, and from beneath the layers of ice, the metallic bones of Flight N-1205 emerged. Dr. Aaron Cole watched the readouts, but it was Maya Reyes who felt the weight of what they were disturbing. She could feel it in the air, a kind of tremor, soft but alive. Somewhere nearby, Nira was watching again. The Bobcat had been seen at dawn, her silhouette sharp against the horizon. She lingered on the ridge where the sun first touched the snow, her silver-gray coat gleaming faintly as wind combed through her fur. Her amber eyes caught the reflection of the excavation lights below. To Maya, it almost looked as if Nira was overseeing the work, a sentinel whose patience stretched far beyond the human sense of time. Ethan's camera followed the animal as she prowled along the perimeter, her large paws spreading over crusted snow with a grace that seemed weightless. "She's drawn to the sound," Ethan said softly. Maya nodded. "No, she's drawn to the memory beneath the sound." Aaron turned, puzzled. "You make it sound like she remembers this crash." Maya didn't answer. She was watching Nira's slow descent from the ridge, the way the creature paused near the shallow trench where ice melted into metal. The Bobcat's head lowered slightly, her whiskers twitching as if she were listening to something below. Hours passed. The wreck revealed its shape: broken wings, shattered fuselage, windows clouded by frost. Riley and Noor worked methodically, chipping away at ice and documenting fragments of personal belongings: a child's toy, a torn scarf, the corner of a flight logbook. Maya crouched near the nose section, running her gloved hand along a stretch of ice smooth as glass. "She's been here before," she murmured. "This isn't just where the plane fell. It's part of her territory." Then something unexpected happened. Nira approached the trench's edge, closer than ever before. The team froze, uncertain whether to move or breathe. The Bobcat stopped just short of the nearest equipment, her muscles tense but unafraid. Her coat rippled in the cold wind. Maya lifted a hand slowly, not to reach, but to show respect. Nira's gaze flicked toward her, then down toward the exposed cockpit. She stepped closer, one deliberate paw after another, and laid herself down on the snow beside the fuselage as if keeping vigil. Ethan filmed in silence, his lens trembling. "She's guarding it," he whispered. Aaron frowned, uneasy. "Or claiming it." Maya shook her head. "No, she's mourning it." When they broke through the final layer of ice around the cockpit, a shape became visible inside a human form still seated, head bowed, hands clasped around a logbook frozen to his lap. The light from Maya's lamp caught the name stitched on the uniform: Captain Henry Wallace. The air grew still. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Then, from beyond the trench, came a low growl. Not threatening warning. Nira had risen to her feet, her body taut, ears erect, staring toward the glacier behind them. "What is it?" Ethan whispered. Maya looked up, eyes narrowing. From somewhere deep within the ice came a cracking noise, slow and steady, like the shifting of old bones. "She's telling us to move," Maya said. The team backed away as the ice groaned louder. A fissure split open near the tail section, spitting shards of blue glass into the air. The Bobcat leapt effortlessly aside, her body a blur of silver motion. When the tremor passed, silence returned, but the scar in the ice remained, a black wound stretching deep into the glacier's heart. Maya turned to look at Nira, who stood at the edge of the fissure, her tail flicking once before she vanished into the dark below. Panic swept through the team. Ethan ran forward, his voice cracking. "Nira." But Maya caught his arm. "Don't. If she went down there, there's a reason." Aaron's face was pale. "That fissure could collapse any second." "It won't," Maya said quietly. "Not while she's down there." For nearly an hour, nothing moved. The only sound was the creak of cooling metal and the whisper of falling snow. Then, from the depths of the fissure, came a flicker of light, not electrical, but reflected, shimmering like moonlight underwater. A moment later, Nira reappeared, climbing back up the frozen wall with impossible agility. Something small dangled from her jaws, a tattered piece of cloth, dark with age. She carried it to the trench and dropped it gently beside Maya. Maya knelt. It was a torn sleeve, part of a flight attendant's uniform, the initials LH, embroidered near the cuff. Lydia Hart, the woman whose diary they would later discover in the fuselage. Nira stepped back, watching as Maya held the fabric close to her chest. "You knew where to find her," Maya whispered. The Bobcat blinked once, then turned away, tail brushing the air like a brushstroke of silver. That night, around the campfire, no one spoke much. The wind had changed. It carried a softer tone, almost melodic, as though the glacier was exhaling after a long tension. Nira remained visible on the ridge, sitting upright, her silhouette illuminated by the flickering orange glow. Her ears swiveled with every sound, but her eyes never left the crash site. She looked less like a predator and more like a priestess of the frozen world, guarding its sacred dead. When the aurora came, green and silent across the heavens, its ribbons shimmered above her. The light painted her fur in ghostly hues, and for a moment she seemed to dissolve into it, part animal, part spirit, her shape outlined in emerald fire. Maya lifted her camera, but her hands trembled too much to record. It wasn't a sight meant to be kept. It was meant to be witnessed, and then let go. As the night deepened, Nira finally rose, stretching her long frame before turning back toward the darkness beyond the ridge. She paused once, looking down at Maya, who stood alone outside her tent. For an instant, it felt like recognition, a farewell between two sentinels who understood each other's purpose. Then Nira stepped into the blowing snow and was gone, leaving only her tracks circling the wreck in perfect symmetry, a silent promise carved in white. And though the storm returned before dawn, burying everything in a new layer of ice, those tracks refused to fade. They gleamed faintly beneath the snow, still visible from above when the first light touched the glacier again, as if the Arctic itself had decided to remember, through the heart of a bobcat. The wind had softened by morning, trading its howl for a low whisper that seemed to come from the glacier itself. Overnight, the excavation had frozen again, sealing the progress they'd made. Dr. Aaron Cole stood by the trench, brushing frost from his beard as he peered down at the half-exposed fuselage. The air shimmered with faint mist, and somewhere above them, a shape moved silently along the ridge. Nira was back. Her coat caught the early light silver gray with flecks of white that blended into the snow until she was almost invisible. She walked the perimeter of the excavation in slow, deliberate circles, her paws silent on the ice. Every so often, she stopped to stare toward the open cockpit, as if she remembered something no human could see. Dr. Maya Reyes followed her with binoculars, her gloved hands trembling slightly. "She knows," Maya whispered. "She's been here before." As the sun rose higher, steam from the drills drifted across the site like breath. Ethan's camera tracked the Bobcat's every movement, capturing the flick of her tail, the rise and fall of her chest. "It's like she's waiting," he said. Maya didn't respond. She was listening. Beneath the hum of the machines, she could hear faint groans echoing through the ice sounds that weren't wind or shifting stone, but memory pressing upward. Riley's voice broke the silence. "We've hit something soft under the captain's seat," he said. Maya joined him at the edge of the cockpit. Beneath the thick glass of frost, a small leather pouch was wedged between metal brackets. Aaron retrieved it with gentle hands, thawing it near the heater until the zipper gave way. Inside was a damp, frozen notebook, its pages fused together by time. "A diary," Aaron breathed. "It survived." The team gathered around as Maya began to separate the pages with tweezers. The ink was faded, but words emerged through the stains. December 25th, 1978. Dawn, if you can call this light dawn. There are 22 of us alive. The signature at the bottom read, Lydia Hart. Ethan's breath caught. "She was a passenger," he said. "Or a crew member." Maya nodded, her eyes glistening. "A witness." As they worked, Nira had moved closer. She now stood at the edge of the trench, watching, her reflection shimmering on the ice. Maya glanced up. "It's her," she said softly. "She found Lydia's sleeve yesterday, and now she's here like she's making sure we finish what we started." Aaron frowned. "You think this animal is guiding us?" Maya didn't answer. She turned another page. "We hear noises outside the plane at night," Lydia had written. "Not wolves. Something else. They leave small animals by the door, rabbits, birds. They're watching us, not hunting." The page beneath was smeared, but the next line was clear. "I think they're trying to help." For a long moment, no one spoke. Even Riley, ever the skeptic, had gone still. The hum of the generators seemed quieter now, as if the world itself was leaning closer to listen. Nira stepped forward, placing one paw on the frozen edge of the wreckage. Her eyes caught Maya's, and something passed between them, acknowledgement, maybe, or understanding. The Bobcat lowered her head, then sat down, tail curled neatly around her body. It felt like a blessing. That night, the storm returned. Snow whirled around the camp, blurring lights into halos. Inside her tent, Maya read more of the diary aloud by lantern glow. January 5th, 1979. Only 12 left. The animals bring food again. The captain says it's impossible, but I've stopped questioning miracles. Maya's voice trembled. "I see their eyes at night, yellow, calm. I'm not afraid anymore." The final line was written in shaky script. "They are the guardians of this place." Ethan lowered the camera, unable to film anymore. "Guardians," he repeated quietly. "She meant the Bobcats." Maya nodded, tears glinting in her eyes, and they never left. Outside, the storm pressed against the tent walls like a breathing thing. Through the roar of the wind came another sound, a deep, rhythmic call that echoed across the valley. Not a roar, but a voice. Nira's. Maya stepped out into the storm, pulling her hood tight. Snow lashed her face, but through the whiteout she saw movement. Nira, standing near the tail section of the plane, her fur glowing faintly under the camp lights. The Bobcat turned her head and began to walk, slowly, along a path that wound away from the site. Maya followed at a distance, her boots sinking in deep drifts. The storm howled, yet she could hear the soft crunch of Nira's steps ahead, deliberate, steady, leading her somewhere unseen. The path ended at a small rise in the glacier. Nira stopped, her body framed against the storm like a ghost carved from snow and light. Maya reached her, panting, and saw what the Bobcat had led her to, a mound of ice shaped by time and wind, smooth and pale. She brushed her glove across the surface and gasped. Beneath the ice, faint outlines of objects lay preserved. A suitcase, a scarf, a set of hands clasped together. The rest of the passengers, the missing. "The frozen grave," she whispered. Nira circled the mound once, then lay down in front of it, her head lowered in silence. The storm seemed to bow around her, the wind softening as if respecting her vigil. Maya knelt beside the Bobcat, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You've been guarding them," she said, "all this time." The animal's ears twitched, but she didn't move. Only her eyes lifted, reflecting the faint green shimmer of the aurora breaking through the storm clouds. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the world covered in untouched white. When the rest of the team found Maya, she was standing alone near the mound, her face pale and calm. "She showed me," Maya said simply, "where they were." The diary rested in her gloved hands, its final page open. "When the end comes," Lydia had written, "I won't be alone." On the ridge, Nira reappeared. She stood tall against the rising sun, her breath steaming in the frigid air. Then, with slow grace, she turned and began walking along the horizon, her tracks winding into infinity. Maya watched her until the last glimpse of silver fur disappeared into the endless white, and somewhere deep in the glacier, the echo of that soft feline call lingered, a reminder that in this place of death, compassion had survived, wearing the fur of a bobcat. The years had passed quietly since the glacier gave back its secrets. Time had softened the camp into memory. Tents were gone, machines buried under snow. Only the wind remained, and the faint circle of paw prints that reappeared each spring, perfectly preserved before melting into mist. 5 winters later, the world had changed. Documentaries were made, scientists debated, and Dr. Maya Reyes had retired to a cabin near the Alaskan coast. Yet the Arctic still called to her. One morning, a letter arrived from Dr. Aaron Cole, his handwriting now shaky but resolute. The satellite picked up movement near the old site, a pattern you might recognize. With "There's that ham." 2 months later, Maya found herself back in the white silence of the north. She was 62 now, her hair more silver than black, her steps slower but steadier. Ethan came with her, camera in hand, older too, his once youthful restlessness replaced by quiet reverence. "I never thought I'd see this place again," he said as they descended the ridge. Maya smiled faintly. "Places like this don't forget us, especially when something's waiting." The sun never rose fully here anymore, only hovered low, brushing the horizon with a bruised orange hue. The old excavation was unrecognizable, just an endless sea of frost. Yet when Maya's boots touched the basin floor, she stopped short. There they were, a series of paw prints, perfectly aligned, cutting across the wind-sculpted snow. Too large for a lynx, too light for a wolf. Her chest tightened. "Nira," she whispered. Ethan knelt to film the trail. Could it be her descendants? Maya didn't answer. She followed the prints toward a ridge where ice caught the last of the sun. And then she saw them. A family of 3 bobcats stood against the wind, a mother and 2 half-grown cubs, their fur silver-gray like moonlight, marked with the same muted rosettes as Nira. The mother's eyes gleamed amber. She watched Maya calmly, unafraid, regal. "Maya, you seeing this movement pattern? It's incredible. The ice strata are responding, almost like resonance." Maya didn't respond. She was focused on the cats. The mother had begun to walk, leading her cubs in a gentle arc along the edge of the ancient wreck site. Each paw landed in a print from years before, perfectly aligned as though written into the glacier's memory. Ethan whispered through his mic. "She's retracing Nira's route." The camera's red light blinked softly, the only human signal in miles of darkness. The bobcat's fur rippled in the starlight. She paused once, turning her head toward Maya, and for a moment, it was as if the Arctic itself looked back. Inside that ring, untouched by drift, lay a single snow hair, fresh, unmarked, a gift. Ethan filmed wordlessly while Maya knelt to examine it. "They remember," she whispered. "They still remember the people who once needed them." Her breath trembled in the cold. Above them, the mother bobcat appeared again on the ridge. Her eyes caught the rising sun, glowing like molten gold. The cubs sat beside her, one pressing its head against her shoulder. Maya lifted her binoculars, but for a moment, her vision blurred. It wasn't just the cold, it was the ache of beauty too vast to bear. She lowered the glasses, knowing she didn't need them anymore. The distance between them had never truly mattered. The bond was already complete. As the sun climbed, the bobcat family began to move away, padding single file into the white horizon. Their tracks shimmered faintly, trailing into infinity, merging with the memory of all those who came before. Maya watched until the last flick of the mother's tail disappeared behind the ridge. Then she looked down and saw her own footprints beside theirs, interwoven, side by side. That night, as the wind returned and the snow began to fall again, Maya sat outside her tent, writing in her journal beneath the aurora. Her handwriting trembled, but her words were steady. "The guardians remain. The ice keeps its promises. Compassion lives in the paws that walk its surface." Far away, a single cry answered across the dark, a call that rose and fell like a heartbeat beneath the glacier. It was not Nira's voice, but it carried the same spirit. The Arctic had found new watchers, and the legend of the bobcats of Flight N 1205 would never fade again. The cubs bounded clumsily in the snow, testing their paws, mimicking their mother's stillness. One of them paused to sniff the air, staring curiously at Ethan's camera lens before darting back. Maya felt tears sting her eyes. "She kept her promise," she said softly. They never left. That evening, they set up a small observation tent near the site. The night was windless, clear, filled with stars. The bobcats stayed near the ridge, their shapes faint in the darkness. Through the thermal scope, Maya could see them moving in precise loops around the area, always tracing the same invisible paths. She realized with a shiver that it was the same pattern Lydia Hart had described in her diary 40 years earlier. "They're still mapping the safe ground," Maya murmured, "teaching each generation the old paths." Around midnight, a low rumble echoed through the glacier. Ice shifted somewhere below, a reminder that nothing here was ever truly still. The bobcat mother raised her head, ears swiveling toward the sound. The cubs froze beside her, then pressed close to her flank. Maya watched, breath held. The mother didn't flee. She stood firm, tail swaying slowly, eyes fixed on the horizon exactly as Nira once had. Aaron's voice crackled through the radio from the base camp miles away. That same calm intelligence, wild, enduring, knowing. The night grew colder. The aurora unfurled across the sky, green ribbons rippling above the snow. The cubs tumbled in the glow, chasing shadows, their laughter silent joy contrasting the solemn rhythm of their mother's watch. Maya smiled through her tears. "They've inherited her purpose," she said softly. "Not just her blood." At dawn, frost covered everything in delicate lace. Maya woke to silence, the kind of silence that feels like reverence. She stepped outside and gasped. Around their camp stretched a perfect circle of paw prints, drawn in the snow as if by unseen hands. The wind had turned strange that week. It carried not just cold, but a sound low, distant, like something shifting beneath the ice. Dr. Maya Reyes knew that tone. It was the glacier breathing again. The sound had returned the same night. Nira's descendants, the mother and her two cubs, Suri and Keen, vanished beyond the ridge. For days the snow remained still, yet Maya could feel the pulse of something stirring below. Aaron Cole's new satellite data confirmed it. Beneath the old crash site, deep under layers of refrozen melt, there was movement. A hollow chamber that hadn't been there before. "It's like the glacier's opening a throat," he said over the radio. Maya listened, her heart sinking. The Arctic never forgot, but it also never gave without asking for something back. At dusk, she and Ethan set out with a small team to the ridge where the bobcats had last been seen. The light was thin, turning the ice pink and blue like bruised glass. Maya stopped suddenly, kneeling. "Look," she whispered. Fresh prints, large, circular, and deeper than before. Nira's bloodline had returned. The mother's tracks curved toward the newly opened fissure, and beside them, the smaller prints of her cubs. They followed the trail to the edge of the chasm. The ground trembled beneath their boots. Below, a faint luminescence pulsed like veins of light trapped in the ice. Ethan set up his drone, sending it down into the darkness. The feed crackled, then steadied, revealing a tunnel carved smooth by meltwater and time. And there, along the walls, were shadows, movement, alive. Maya's breath caught. "She's down there." The team prepared a descent, but Maya hesitated. If Nira's kin went in, it wasn't by accident, she warned. The glacier called them. Still, curiosity, human and fatal, prevailed. They lowered cables, lights flickering against the ice. The air was thick and oddly warm, humming with static. When Maya's boots touched the floor of the chamber, the world fell silent. The walls shimmered in shades of blue and green, like the inside of a living lung. Embedded in the ice were fragments of the plane, metal, wires, cloth, but also bones, arranged in strange patterns, almost deliberate. Ethan turned his camera, light trembling. "This isn't natural," he whispered. "Someone or something placed them here." And then, from the far side of the cavern, a soft growl echoed, not threatening, but ancient. The light swung, And there she was, the adult female bobcat, descendant of Nera, standing with her cubs at the edge of the chamber. Frost glittered in her fur, her amber eyes glowing in the dark. The cubs pressed close to her legs, unafraid of the humans. Maya felt tears sting her eyes. "You brought us here," she said softly. "Why?" "I tell now." The bobcat's gaze shifted to the ice wall behind her. Maya turned her light and froze. Beneath the translucent layer was a figure preserved in crystal clarity. A man in a torn flight jacket, one arm outstretched, fingers curled toward something just beyond reach. Clutched in his hand was a camera, its film canister intact. "A survivor," Ethan breathed. "Someone who never made it out." The mother bobcat stepped forward and placed her paw against the ice, directly over the man's hand. Her tail twitched once, then she looked back at Maya. The message was clear. This was not a discovery to exploit, it was a grave to protect. Ethan lowered his camera slowly. "She doesn't want it disturbed." Maya nodded, understanding too well. "She's guarding them, like before." Then the glacier moaned, a deep, echoing sound that shook the chamber. Cracks spidered across the walls, small at first, then widening. The mother bobcat herded her cubs toward the tunnel's mouth, looking back only once. Maya and Ethan scrambled for the ascent cables. The ice split again, a sharp, echoing crack. Water gushed upward in bursts of steam and snow. As the team was hauled to the surface, Maya turned in time to see the bobcat family emerge from the fissure, moving with impossible grace across collapsing ice. The mother stopped at the ridge, her silver-gray coat blazing under the aurora. She looked back at Maya, calm, unblinking, then disappeared into the storm. By morning, the fissure had sealed itself, as if it had never existed. The glacier was whole again, smooth and quiet. Only the tracks of the bobcats remained, weaving in perfect circles over the site before vanishing into the horizon. Ethan stood beside Maya, his breath fogging the air. "Do you think she'll come back?" Maya shook her head slowly. "No, her work's done." She glanced toward the rising sun, where faint paw prints shimmered like veins of light under the snow. "She's buried what should stay buried, 2 signs with their Enzarians." Weeks later, when the footage reached the world, it ended with a single still frame Nera's descendant standing against the aurora, her cubs at her side, the ice glowing beneath their paws. Viewers called it beautiful, haunting, but Maya knew what it truly was, a warning wrapped in grace. Because some truths, like the Arctic, were meant to be watched over, not unearthed. And the guardians, the bobcats of the ice, would always make sure of that. Well, Maya woke in her tent, heart hammering, her breath fogging the air. Outside, the world was still. Ethan slept soundly, the camp stove ticking softly in the corner. She reached for her field journal and, with trembling hands, wrote one word: Nera. The following day, the weather changed without warning. A storm rolled over the ridge, dense and sudden. As the wind screamed, the monitors picked up faint vibrations from beneath the glacier, measured, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. "It's not seismic," Ethan murmured. "It's something else." Maya stepped outside, snow lashing her face. Through the white veil, movement flickered near the ridge, 3 shapes, faint and luminous. The bobcat family had returned, but something about them was different. Their outlines glowed faintly in the stormlight, and as they walked, the snow beneath their paws didn't sink, it shimmered. They moved to the exact spot where the fissure had once opened months before. The mother paused, turned her head toward Maya, and for the first time, Maya felt an invitation. "She wants us to follow," Maya whispered. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Then we follow." They trekked through the blizzard, guided only by the faint light from the cat's fur. The storm muffled every sound except the pulse of wind. After nearly an hour, the cats stopped at a narrow valley rimmed with ice pillars. In the center, the snow glowed from beneath, pale blue and alive, like light trapped inside glass. The mother bobcat crouched low, pressing her paw against the ice. A low hum rippled through the ground. The cubs mimicked her, and the glow intensified. Maya and Ethan watched in awe as faint shapes began to emerge under the surface images carved by nature itself. Human faces, outlines of hands, and the unmistakable form of an airplane wing. The glacier was remembering. Maya fell to her knees, overcome. "She's showing us what's buried in memory," she whispered. "Not in ice and time." Ethan raised his camera, but his hands shook too much to film. "Maya, are we seeing ghosts?" She shook her head. "Not ghosts. Echoes." Then, for an instant, the storm broke. The aurora burst overhead, spilling light into the valley. The snow caught fire with color green bleeding into violet, violet into gold. The bobcats stood at the center, their fur blazing like molten silver. Around them, the ice pulsed in slow rhythm, responding to their presence. Maya could almost feel it, the heartbeat of the glacier itself. When the light dimmed, the mother turned toward Maya once more. Her amber eyes held something deeper than animal instinct. Grief, wisdom, memory. She stepped forward, close enough that Maya could see each crystal of frost on her whiskers. The bobcat's breath touched her cheek, warm even in the sub-zero air. For the first time, Maya reached out her hand not to touch, but to mirror the gesture. The two stood there, woman and creature, reflections of each other across millennia of survival. And then, with a low rumble, the ice beneath them cracked not violently, but like a door unlocking. A soft blue glow spilled upward, illuminating the shapes of the past. Fragments of Flight N-1000, 205's wreckage, frozen faces, and something else, something older. Stone carvings embedded deep in the glacier wall, ancient and deliberate, a series of feline figures encircling a human silhouette. Maya's voice trembled. They were worshipped here, long before the crash. The bobcat blinked slowly, then turned away. The cubs followed, pausing only once to glance back at Maya. She felt an ache rise in her chest, the understanding dawning clear and terrible. The cats weren't just guardians of the lost, they were part of the land itself, its memory made flesh. Ethan's voice broke the silence. "We can't tell the world this. They'll destroy it." Maya nodded faintly. "We don't record truth to own it." By the time they returned to camp, the storm had passed. The glacier was still again, its surface smooth as glass. The light had shifted, the aurora was gone, replaced by a sky full of stars. Maya looked back one last time. On the ridge stood the bobcat mother, her cubs at her sides. The aurora's last flicker traced her outline in pale green. Then, as if woven back into the air, she was gone. That night, Maya dreamt once more. She was deep beneath the ice, walking through corridors of blue light. Nira was there beside her, silent, her amber eyes guiding the way. They came to a wall of pure crystal, and within it lay both woman and cat reflections of one another, eternal and intertwined. When Maya woke, her cheeks were wet with tears. In the morning, Ethan found her notebook open on the table. On its last page, written in her steady, looping script, were the words, "The Arctic remembers everything, but it never speaks unless you listen." Outside, on the untouched snow near their camp, 3 sets of paw prints glowed faintly in the dawn light before fading into the wind. The guardians had returned to their home beneath the ice, and the glacier slept once more, its echoes whispering softly to those who knew how to hear. The nights had grown longer now, long enough that Maya sometimes forgot where the sky ended and the snow began. The glacier had fallen silent again. But it was not a peaceful silence. It was a held breath, a waiting. And in that stillness, the dreams began. The first dream came quietly. Maya stood alone beneath an aurora that hung low, almost within reach. The colors moved like living smoke, green, gold, violet, and then the light twisted into the shape of a cat. Its outline shimmered, delicate as frost. Nira. The bobcat's amber eyes burned bright, and when she opened her mouth, the wind itself seemed to speak. "You listened once," the voice said. "Now, you must remember." The story of Flight N1205 had long since faded from the headlines, but the glacier had not forgotten. Seasons came and went, and with them, the wind carried whispers that no microphone could capture. What the world called silence was, to the Arctic, merely breath. Dr. Maya Reyes was 70 now. The lines on her face had deepened, but her eyes remained the same, soft, curious, and full of the quiet ache that came from knowing too much of the wild. She no longer traveled often, yet every winter, when the sun barely rose, she found herself standing at the edge of her cabin porch in Alaska, staring toward the far horizon of white. Somewhere out there, beneath ice and memory, the Bobcat still watched. A young woman arrived one morning, Ava Lynn, a wildlife biologist in her early 30s, bright-eyed and full of restless energy. She carried a thick binder marked Project Guardian. "You don't know me, Dr. Reyes," she said, voice trembling slightly, "but I think I found them." Maya studied her in silence. "The Bobcats," Ava continued. "Not just one. A new pack, 4 adults, 2 young, same markings, the same scar pattern." She pulled out a photo taken by a drone, a silver-gray feline standing on a frozen ridge, long ear tufts lifted by the wind, amber eyes reflecting green aurora. Maya's breath caught. "Nira's bloodline," she whispered. "Still here." Within days, they were back in the Arctic, the place Maya had promised herself she would never return to. Ethan Cole had long retired, living quietly somewhere in Washington, but his camera still came along. Passed down to Ava. "She wanted you to keep seeing," Maya told her. "That's how the Arctic remembers." The landscape was familiar, yet different. The glacier's surface had shifted, cracked, reshaped by time. But the light, thin, cold, endless, was the same. It was under that ghostly glow that they first saw the paw prints. 6 sets this time, all fresh. Circling the rim of a frozen valley. "They're not hiding," Ava whispered. "They're waiting." The snow thickened as they followed the trail. Hours passed before they reached a frozen ridge overlooking what had once been the excavation basin. The old plain was buried again, sealed completely by centuries of ice, but around it, carved in the snow with perfect precision, was a circle, an infinity symbol of tracks, glowing faintly under moonlight. And at its center stood one bobcat. It was massive, larger than any Maya had ever seen. The silver-gray coat shimmered with pale frost, each rosette etched with age. The long black ear tufts swayed gently, and those eyes, amber, bright, ancient, stared straight at Maya, as if recognizing her through time. Ava raised the camera, her hands trembling. "That's her," she whispered. "That's Nira's line." The bobcat didn't move. The snow around her stirred with faint luminescence, like breath turning to light. Then, from the shadows, others emerged, the rest of the lineage. A pair of younger adults, 2 smaller cubs, and 1 old male, his muzzle whitened with age. Together, they formed a circle around the old wreck site. A living ring of guardians. Maya fell to her knees. "You kept watch," she said softly. "Through decades of storms, through everything we forgot." The mother bobcat stepped forward, paws silent on the snow. She stopped just short of Maya, the 2 of them facing each other once again, like echoes meeting in the same breath of time. Ava's voice broke the silence. "She's not afraid of us," Maya shook her head. She never was. The sky began to change. The aurora flared to life, green ribbons twisting above them, mirrored in the ice below. The bobcats looked upward, their fur catching the celestial light, and then, as the wind rose, they began to move not away, but together, tracing the infinity path again. Each paw print landed perfectly in the last, forming a continuous loop that glowed brighter with every step. Ava's camera caught it all, the light, the movement, the unbroken rhythm. "It's like they're drawing something," she whispered. Maya nodded. "Not drawing, remembering." The mother bobcat stopped halfway through the circle and turned to look directly at Maya. For a moment, the world went still. the light from the aurora reflected in her eyes, forming two golden rings. Maya understood. The Guardians weren't just protecting what lay beneath, they were carrying forward the memory of compassion itself, a bond between species older than language. As dawn approached, the aurora faded, and the glow in the snow dimmed. The bobcats began to drift away, one by one, dissolving into the white horizon. The mother was the last to go. She paused, her breath visible in the morning chill, and gave a low, resonant call that rolled across the glacier like a heartbeat. Then she turned and vanished into the light. Ava lowered her camera. "Will anyone believe this?" she asked quietly. Maya smiled faintly. "It doesn't matter. What's real doesn't need witnesses. It just needs to be remembered." Back at camp, she watched the footage again. The final frame froze on the mother bobcat standing in the aurora's glow, eyes bright as suns. On the lens, a thin layer of frost caught the reflection of Maya's face beside hers. Two watchers, one human, one wild, forever sharing the same gaze. That night, as she wrote her final field note, a faint noise drifted through the still air, the soft pad of paws outside the tent, and a single echoing call fading into the stars. Maya smiled through her tears. "The light never dies," she whispered. "It just finds new eyes." Outside, the wind rose gently. In the snow, 6 trails of paw prints curved into infinity before vanishing under the moonlight. The Guardians had walked again, and somewhere deep beneath the ice, the Arctic stirred alive, remembering, eternal. The world had already moved on. The documentaries had aired, the debates had quieted, and the legend of the Guardians of the Glacier had settled into the folds of forgotten folklore. But deep in the Arctic silence, far beyond the range of satellites and stories, the snow still bore a pattern that no storm could erase. Dr. Maya Reyes, now in her final years, sat in her cabin by the Alaskan coast. The ocean was frozen at its edge, and the air was so still that even the gulls seemed to move in slow motion. Her silver hair was pinned beneath a woolen shawl. Her parka hung by the door like an old friend retired from adventure. On her desk lay a single photograph, one that Ava Lynn had taken years ago. The great silver bobcat beneath the aurora, eyes glowing like suns. Outside, the wind rose gently, whispering against the glass. Maya's breath trembled as she leaned forward, her fingers tracing the edge of the image. "You're still out there," she murmured, watching. That night, as the moon climbed high and the sea ice crackled, Maya dreamed again. She was standing once more upon the glacier. The aurora burned low, green ribbons curling around her shoulders like silk, and before her, across a plain of untouched snow, a shape moved with soundless grace. It was the bobcat, the same silver-gray coat, the same proud tilt of the head, the same amber eyes that seemed to hold both fury and peace. But this time, she was alone. The cubs, the pack, the lineage all gone. Only one remained, the last guardian. Maya's throat tightened. "You survived," she whispered. The bobcat stepped closer, paws sinking lightly into snow that shimmered like glass. Her fur caught the light of the aurora, transforming her into something both earthly and divine. She stopped a few feet away, lowered her head, and pressed her paw gently into the snow. The ground glowed beneath the print, a single circle of light. Then another. Slowly, she began to walk in a spiral, her path forming the infinity loop that Maya had seen so many times before. But this time, the light didn't fade. It grew stronger, spreading outward until the entire glacier shimmered with soft, radiant warmth. Maya looked down. Her own footprints had begun to glow, merging with the bobcats. The line between them, dissolved woman and creature now walking side by side, their paths intertwined. The ice below sang, a low and ancient hum like a heart remembering its first beat. And then, the bobcat turned her gaze to Maya. In her eyes, Maya saw not one life but many, the generations before her, and those yet to come. The old guardian blinked slowly, once, then leaned forward until her forehead brushed Maya's hand. The warmth of that touch pierced the cold like fire. A voice soft, familiar rose in the wind. You listened. Maya smiled, tears freezing on her lashes. I tried. The aurora flared, painting the sky with bands of green and gold so bright they reflected off every facet of the glacier. The Bobcat stepped back, her form dissolving into light, each strand of fur unraveling into sparkles that drifted upward into the air. Soon, there was nothing left but the prints glowing in the snow, forming an unbroken loop. Maya woke before dawn. The fire in her cabin had gone out, but the room was filled with a soft, unearthly glow, filtering through the window. She rose, weak but smiling, and opened the door. The world outside was hushed under a thin veil of snow, and there, across her porch, leading down toward the frozen shore, were paw prints. Large, deliberate, and perfectly spaced. The trail shimmered faintly in the starlight, fading only as it reached the horizon. She didn't call out. She didn't need to. She simply stood there, one hand over her heart, watching until the prints were gone. "Goodbye, old friend," she whispered. When Ava arrived weeks later, she found Maya's cabin quiet. On the desk lay her final journal entry, written in a steady hand. "She came for me. The Arctic remembers its promises. The Guardian remains alive in the wind, in the snow, in every heart that still listens." Beside it was Maya's camera, still running, capturing the window's pale reflection. In that final frame, the lens caught something impossible. A single silver bobcat standing just beyond the porch, looking back toward the house. Her fur gleamed like frost caught in sunrise. Then, in one slow, graceful step, she turned and vanished into the white. For a moment, the horizon shimmered as if breathing. And then, silence. But when Ava reviewed the footage, she noticed something Maya must have known all along. The last paw print, left glowing on the edge of the frozen sea, wasn't shaped like a cat's at all. It was half human, half feline, and as the final credits of the Arctic played out across the snow, the world understood some stories are not meant to end. They simply change form. The light of Nira's bloodline still moved beneath the ice, circling forever, waiting for the next soul who dared to listen. The Arctic watched. The Guardians endured. The light never died. If this story touched your heart, just drop a 1 in the comments, or a 0 if it stayed quiet inside you. Don't forget to subscribe. There are more gentle stories waiting just beyond the trees.